Welcome to Naked Faith, where we take off the masks, drop the performances, and get honest about what it really means to follow Jesus. I'm Ron, and these are my amazing co hosts, Grace and Michelle. And together we're creating a space for real conversations, real stories, and real encounters with a love that never gives up. No agendas, no religious hypes, just real people sharing how God met them in the messy middle and pointing to one truth: Jesus still transforms lives. So whether you're walking strong or hanging on by a thread, you're welcome here. This is Naked Faith. Let's get into it. All right. Well, welcome to our episode. And so I don't know how many of you listened to the Matrix episode, and I'm not going to say that probably 3 times because I don't want to get accused of saying it 40 times. Grace? No, I'm just kidding. But I just kind of feel like there's some stuff that we left on the table there, and I kind of want to explore that a little bit more, and what my thought process is behind, I think I left it with, I do believe we live in a simulation. And what does that really mean? And I guess, what do I mean by we do live in a simulation? And so before I go on, I don't know, what are you guys' thoughts?
My thought is, when it comes to thinking about living in a simulation or a matrix, it's not, I don't think of it as literal of we're in someone's computer and the universe is a computer. There's so many layers and perspectives on what people consider to be the matrix, but my generalization is the society that we've built today, what we know as patriarchy and capitalism, that is a version of a simulation or matrix that we have. So it's not to be taken too literally, in my opinion, but you think about just what did the people create when they created this country. That's kind of the version of what our country is I label it as patriarchy and capitalism, because you think about these white men from England and Europe in general, but they, invaded a land that was full of human beings already, full of civilization and life, and then they take other people from Africa, people that were forced to do that and didn't ask to be used, as a way to build the American economy. And that's what our country has run on since the very beginning, and it never really evolved, even though obviously the Emancipation Proclamation, freed the slaves, but there's still so much about our system and society that is very broken because it was built on that aspect of killing people that were already here and then dragging other people along to build our country for white people. And that's my long answer.
Okay, I get that.
Yeah.
So, Michelle, do you have a thought on that, or?
So I'm taking it from a Christian standpoint. You have this entity, God, Jesus, that already knows apparently everything about us, everything we're going to do. So what makes you think that he's controlling every aspect of our life? Because they say that he already knows what we're doing or what we're going to do. So he's already anticipated our choices, our life choices, anticipated when we do something wrong or when we do something right. So absolutely, we live in a simulation.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, that's really good, actually. Very two different.
Can I say something, though?
Sure, yeah.
Everything that I said is kind of, I don't want to say led by, but created from what we know as Catholicism and Christianity. That's how it connects, because all these white men were wanting to create more of a, I don't know, Christian homeland or something, because they were literally too weird for the Church of England, so they left. But then it, goes back even more hundreds and thousands of years of just how people have tried to instill Catholicism on everyone else, or Christianity on everyone else, as a way of power and control, and not true enlightenment. Yeah.
I just imagine, really good. And I'm going back to that game, The Sims. I just imagine this guy sitting at a computer desk with his computer, controlling every you're gonna go make this right now. You're gonna go to bed right now. You're gonna, go swimming, and I'm gonna take your ladder away. And
Right. Yeah, suddenly you're on fire.
yeah,
I've honestly it's only happened a couple times, but I've kind of thought or imagined kind of like my higher self, my higher spiritual self, kind of doing that with my puny little human self, like, oh, this is what I want to do with her today, and this is what, So it's like really just myself, my own spiritual self, yeah.
Yeah, I get that.
But yeah,
actually.
I get it.
Yeah. Well, all right. So I've been doing a lot of thinking, and I don't know how much I've said this on our recording, but I mean, we've all talked about sometimes I'm labeled a conspiracy theorist because
Okay.
I question everything, right?
Mhm.
I don't believe what you hear, right? There's always I've always believed that there's a hidden agenda. And so if you go find the hidden agenda, then you'll find the real motivation, if that all makes sense. That's what I'm
Mhm.
saying. So when I say like we live in a simulation, this is what I mean. And so when you look at the Gnostic concept of there's this flawed creator that created this universe, that created this world, and the world itself is flawed. And then they created these rulers called archons. And these archons are what are influencing society. And one of the things, how the archons survive is they survive off human energy.
Mm.
And so this is, again, this is all the Gnostic belief. And so like
Right.
part of
I'm
What?
like doing my best to follow and visualize what you're talking about because it's just not as well known. But I'm there with you. I'm doing my best.
Well, okay. So, I mean, we have talked about this before, right? There is this divine energy, right? We all have the masculine and feminine energy. And I mean, this is where you're probably going to be able to more talk about that, Grace, because I'm just starting to learn this.
Mhm.
And, but you've studied this for a little bit longer than I have, right? So, but that energy that's created, whether it's negative or positive energy, is still energy. And I think, weren't you the one that was saying that, or I don't know if I read this, but maybe you said it, is that like there's like this circle of energy that we give off, and like it emanates from us, and it's like a circle of like 8 feet or so that this energy field comes around us, right?
Right. Yeah. I don't know if I did, it must have been a while ago. Because I have at least read that and learned that as well, that like just our energy field is somewhere. Actually, I think I've seen like up to 20 feet even.
Is it? Okay.
Maybe, yeah. So something like that. Yeah.
Okay. So if you take that thought process, right? Like that we do give off this energy, and I believe that this has been like they've been able to measure this, right? So that as humans, we do give off this energy field. And when we're all in positive energy and our energy fields connect, then you create a bigger thing of energy, right? Positive energy. So if you think about in the Gnostic concept, these archons are feeding off the energy that we give off, but they also they want to keep us ignorant, right? So like in the Gnostic concept, the higher consciousness is remembering who you were and remembering where you came from. And that's what the Gnostics say, this, when you achieve the gnosis, the Christ consciousness, is when you've gotten to the point where you remember who you were, you remember where you came from. And that's what allows you to defeat the 7 powers and move
and that's
to...
what, yeah.
Go ahead.
Sorry. No, and that's what Jesus was preaching himself.
Correct.
He didn't want anyone to follow him specifically. He didn't care about that. He was just trying to help show people that like this is how you can, tap into that Christ consciousness that we all have and we're all connected to.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And so what the archons do is they put this veil, right? This veil of ignorance, and they keep us not knowing who we are. And so when you're just living your life day to day, like, oh, I got to get up and I'm going to go to work and I'm going to eat breakfast and then I'm going to have lunch at noon, and then at 5 o'clock I'm going to leave work and I'm going to come home, and I'm, and you're not being in tune with what's actually happening in the world. You're living in that veil. And so when you go back to the movie of the Matrix, the people that were in the simulation or in the computer, they were in the veil, right? They didn't want to see beyond, they couldn't see beyond the veil, or they didn't want to see beyond the veil. And so there's a whole lot of things that are happening beyond the veil. And I think that's where, like, when I say I question everything, or I'm a conspiracy theorist, is because I've always felt like, I can't really pinpoint at the point in my life when I started getting to this place of none of this seems right. And so, but I know it's been a good 7 or 8 years that I have just lived in this, where the world is not, this is not how the world's supposed to operate.
Right.
Like, this is not normal. Right. And so I think the other thing that causes these archons to get our energy is the suffering that we go through. So if you think about, it's a flawed world, and pain and suffering was never how we were supposed to be living, but they've created this world where pain and suffering is the norm. And then what happens when a people are always in pain and suffering? What kind of energy are they giving off? It's this negative energy that's not joyous and not happy and not enlightened. So when I say the veil, right, I think about, like, even, you bring in real life things. And so, I've told you guys this before, like, I don't necessarily believe, you turn on the news, and what does the news report? It's only negative things that it reports. They never report positive things, right? You never hear feel good stories. You never hear the positive sides of humanity. It's always something. And then they also report in a way where it's going to divide people and cause controversy.
Yeah.
And I don't believe that at the core, we're all that hateful. So I think, like, I've been trying to think of, like, an example of of something that's going on now that's not going to be too controversial, but I don't know how to, like, I don't know. I mean, cause you bring up Donald Trump, right? And people have their opinions on him, and then there's people that have bad opinions on him. Right. And you think, like, and this is where I say, this is not right, because, 25 years ago, everybody loved this guy. And then he runs for president, and now nobody loves him, right? And so it's just, again, and I'm not saying this to be that he's a great guy. I'm just saying, like, the media loved him 25, 30 years ago. He was the darling of the media. Like, they paraded him out for everything. And then he gets into politics, and now all of a sudden he's not lovable. And so, I mean, he does do a lot of it to his own. Don't get me wrong. He, if he just learned to shut up, he would probably be not as bad. But you see what I'm saying? Like, I think there's a because controversy sells. It makes money for these organizations. So I think, like, if you could find a lesser controversial topic that that we probably don't all agree on, and if you started to pull back the veil, you could see where we're being manipulated to think the way we think. We're being manipulated. And that's the simulation. That's the matrix. That's the veil that the archons keep us trapped in. Because the energy that we produce when we're not in agreement is the negative energy. The energy that we produce when we're fighting and we're not talking to our family or not talking to our friends because we disagree with them or whatever, right? Like, that's the energy I'm talking about. And that's the simulation. And
yeah, and I mean, yeah, I feel like there's so much to say there. I'm gonna start with the veil because actually before before we recorded, obviously, like, it took us a while to start recording because I couldn't connect well enough for you guys to see and hear me, but I could see and hear you just fine, and that almost feels like a veil to me, because as that was happening, I was like, wait, is this what it's like for my family on the other side to just, like, see and hear me all the time, but they, like, they don't really say anything, like, I can't hear or see them at all, but, like, they're there. They're just there. And they can see and hear everything that I do. So that was just the first thing. And then, yeah, your version of the simulation. Yeah, just all the division. I totally get what you mean. And it's always been a fight or, about left versus right when the real issue is top versus bottom because like
Hmm.
all these billionaires are sitting up at the top just seeing us fight against each other and they're like, "Oh, well they're not bothering us, so we're fine, everything's okay." And,
Or they're
it
orchestrating it.
doesn't matter what happens to them. Yeah, exactly. They are orchestrating.
Now,
Yeah.
have you guys been following the mayor in LA?
No.
Or,
I just briefly
I'm a,
saw something on it today.
so I'm a millennial, so I've been like following this.
Mm.
I was just thinking that would be a good example because it's not super controversial, but I don't have
Well,
millennials on
I
this
don't know.
podcast.
I don't know what you're talking. The only mayor I've been paying attention to is New York City, which is, Zoran Mamdani, because
So,
he's doing, yeah.
so in June, LA is supposed to be voting in a new mayor, and a
Mm.
reality TV star, Spencer Pratt, he was on, I think, The Hills. It was like a big show back when I was a teenager, and
Mm-hmm.
on The Hills, he was like portrayed as, kind of like the bad guy. Everybody hated him. Yeah, he was just kind of like the bad guy. So now he's running for the mayor of LA because he lives like in the Palisades, and if you remember, like the Palisades
Mm.
are all
Mm-hmm.
burned down from all the wildfires a few
Right.
years ago.
Yeah.
And I guess there's been issues with the current mayor of LA about getting things rebuilt in the Palisades and getting people's homes back and such. So he's running more on the platform. I think he's running as a Republican, but I think he more identifies with like a independent Democrat party, but he's running more on the side like for the people. Like he wants to make sure that people who were affected by the wildfires are taken care of, which he feels currently that they're not. So,
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Hmm.
Yeah. I hadn't really heard anything about that, so that's interesting. Yeah.
it's super interesting if you
Right, right.
that whole conversation just reminded me of that.
Right. With that, I mean, just with that in mind, it's like I understand politicians always have like a platform, that they kind of campaign on or campaign from. But with him, I mean, I'm sure everyone already has this reservation of like him being a reality TV star. What does he know
Yeah.
about politics and things like that? And I get if he totally wants to support the wildfires, that's great. I just hope like if he wants to run for mayor, he knows all that it includes, not just rebuilding this part of the community. It's about
Right.
all parts, which is why I love Zoran Mamdani in New York City. Because he inherited a $12 billion deficit from Andrew Cuomo and like any other, mayor in the past. And he's already been able to level that back to zero in the, 4 or 5 months that he's been in office. And it was simply because he taxed the billionaires in New York City and he was able to get that money back from them. And it's like, that's not even a dent in their car, like they don't miss that money. And that's what it's like so frustrating about everything going on is just like the answer's so simple. You just have to like put people in jail, hold them accountable, and tax all the billionaires because they don't need that money whatsoever. And that's quite literally it, in my opinion. And
Okay, so do you see
yeah.
what's happening here? No, like, and I'm not trying to, but that's the veil. That's the Archon energy. It creates a controversy, and now you're giving off the negative energy, and you're feeding the Archon or Archons because they create a controversy, right? Like they create this, and so because there's the other side that would say, well, these tax incentives that he placed on people are only temporary. And I remember back in the days when Bill Clinton was president, he came out and touted he was the first president in like 100 years that balanced the budget. But it wasn't true. The budget wasn't balanced. It on paper, it looked that way, but it was not true, right? So it was when you go look at all the way that they had worded the taxes and the revenue coming in, it really was never balanced. And so, again, not to take away the things that Bill Clinton tried to do as president. And I think that's where the controversy comes in, right? Because I can look back now at Bill Clinton's presidency, and it wasn't a total disaster. I mean, he did do some good things while he was president. There were a lot of good things that happened under his terms.
Mm-hmm.
And so, we tend to focus on the negative, right? We don't tend to focus on like, okay, this was a positive thing that he did, or, I'm trying to think of something that.
Okay, well, that's Bill Clinton.
Well, no, I'm just saying.
Yeah.
I realized you guys weren't alive. You guys, well, Michelle, you were, but Grace, I realized you weren't alive during Bill Clinton. No. But I mean, saying that, probably that was when I first started noticing this. I'm sorry, Michelle, go ahead.
I was going to say, I can see where you're coming from, because like when you think of Bill Clinton, you automatically think of, the Monica Lewinsky like scandals and stuff. So I see where you're coming from. Like,
yeah, but see, you don't focus on.
What you're saying is not the first thing I focus on when I think of Bill Clinton. So I get it.
Right. Yeah. And so people don't want to sit back and go, okay, well, he did do some great things. Like there were some great things that happened in the 90s when he was president.
Mm-hmm.
And it wasn't, because like, okay, so there's the divide, right? So you got people that sit on the right and they're like, well, I'll never give Bill Clinton credit for anything because he was a Democrat, And you're right, Michelle. Like, what did people equate? People who were alive during his presidency, all we were inundated was the controversy of things that happened, right? He manipulated this intern, and that became a big thing. And, he was the first president to be impeached. Well, he was the second president to ever be impeached. And like over silly stuff. When you think back, like, what did he get impeached for? It was silly stuff. It was meant to create a controversy. I mean, they had no legal basis to impeach this guy, but they did it. And it, it was for power. It was to create controversy. And I remember, I'll say back then I was not a Bill Clinton supporter, and I was thinking, like, this is what you're going to impeach this guy over, like, because he's redefined a simple word, and like, you know what I mean? And so it's that energy. That's what it is. And so that was the moment when I started realizing we're just pawns in these people's games. It's really not about us. It's about their power and their ability to stay in control.
The only thing is they don't outnumber us. And that's part of the problem too, is like we're not able to fully band together to actually like stop all this from happening, when it's the whole point of our country is we the people, and that includes literally everyone.
Correct.
And when you do not include everyone and cause that division, it's hard to unite as we the people in every way.
So I think though it's what you said though, right? We the people, because we get caught up because of the veil, right? There's this veil that's over us, and it's this veil of ignorance, because we don't know who we truly are. We don't remember who our true nature is.
I was going to say, and then going back to the Matrix simulation part of it, it's like we're all very busy just trying to like make money and work to support our own lives. Like they're distracting us in that sense, like we can't just like stop necessarily because everything is so expensive now. And we need the money to live.
Okay, so that's another good example that you bring up. It's highly frustrating when you think about a person your age is going to struggle to live the so-called American dream because, interest rates are through the roof. The price of goods and services are way more than they should be. Right. And it wasn't, I remember being 25, Grace, and not making, my wife and I were talking about this, like looking back at our salaries in the 90s, like it would be considered poverty today, right? But it wasn't back then. We lived fairly decently for two young people in their 20s. We weren't rich. We didn't have kids. So I'm like, there wasn't, wonderful human beings sucking us dry, but, no, I love my kids. I wouldn't really say that. I would give them anything in the world. And they know that. That's the problem. I would give them anything in the world. But but you know what I'm saying? Like you look at back of what, I mean, we were renting a 2-bedroom apartment in California paying $1,200 a month. Like
that's unheard of.
Unheard of. Yeah.
Yeah.
And so, you know what I'm saying? And so like, I mean, I'm sure your apartment in Cleveland is more than that.
Yeah.
And Cleveland is not California.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? You don't have a lot of people moving. Like Cleveland is not even in the top 50 places of people moving to. So it's just kind of frustrating, right? And so it's like, and I go back to it's this veil. So people, when you become awakened, or when you become aware of the veil, and you become aware of the ignorance that is clouding what is truly happening, that's when you get caught up in the controversy and giving off the negative energy, which then feeds the archons. And that's the Gnostic view. And so I was going to tell the story about my woes yesterday. It turned out great, but it was heart attack moment, right? Like, so I'm traveling back from Sweden yesterday, and I get to the airport in the morning. Now, mind you, before this, I had changed my flight to an earlier flight to get to Frankfurt. So my trip was leaving Gothenburg, Sweden, going to Frankfurt, and then it was a direct flight from Frankfurt to Orlando, which I love because I hate flying to like Philly or Atlanta and then spending, because at that point you just want to get home. So it's a longer flight. It's like a 10.5-hour flight, but at least when you land, you're home, right? So the day before, I had called the airport to change my flight to get on an earlier flight going into Frankfurt because I was worried about having enough time to get through passport control. Because on the way over to get through passport control, it took almost 2 hours, and we almost missed our flight to Sweden. And so I was like, I don't want to be stuck in Germany for 24 hours. And because, that's one thing I always fear is like, I've been away from home for 4 or 5 days, or sometimes it's been longer, and I really don't want to spend another night here. I just want to get home, And so anyway, I called the day before. They changed my flight. Everything seemed to be great. And then that morning, yesterday morning, we get to the airport, and I opened up my app to pull up my boarding passes, and my boarding pass from Frankfurt to Orlando was missing. And the day before, it was there. And so I'm like, okay, that freaks me out. And, my coworker's like, well, you got a boarding pass. I said, yeah, but it's not in the app. So I don't it only shows that I'm going to Frankfurt, And so anyway, working back and forth with the airline, just before we took off to go to Frankfurt, they told me it's been fixed. And so I refreshed my app, and sure enough, it showed back up. And so I thought everything was great. Now, mind you, leading up to this, I'm feeding into the anxiety, and I'm getting angry, and I'm giving off a lot of negative vibes. And so I get to Frankfurt, and we get through passport control. We've got like 4 or 5 hours to kill. So we went to one of the lounges. We're hanging out there. And then, now it's time to go to the gate to board our plane coming to Orlando. And so, they also then have a secondary passport check. So the airline then will verify that you have your passport and you are on the plane. And so you get to the first screening, and I handed them my passport and my boarding pass, and the lady looks it up, and she's like, yeah, you're good to go. And I even jokingly said to her, I was like, okay, so I am on this flight, right? Because, in the back of my mind, I'm thinking, you lost my ticket once, right? I want to make sure I'm on this flight. And she's like, yeah, you're good. And I was like, okay, great. So then they start boarding the plane. And now I go scan my boarding pass, and they said, sir, you don't have a ticket. So they told me to, I had to go to the counter, right? I had to get out of line and go to the counter. And I'm like, what do you mean I don't have a ticket? And so, now I'm about to have a heart attack because I just want to get home, right? And I'm thinking, what am I going to do? My coworker's already on the plane, and not that I needed him, but, I'm like, my kids are old enough. So if I hadn't made it home last night, it wouldn't have been that big of a deal. But it's the whole logistics of thinking, what am I going to do? I don't want to have to spend the night here. I'm going to have to go find a hotel. Yeah. I'm going to have to do all the stuff. And then, it's the negative energy started percolating, and it was really, really high at this point, and the lady then, does some things on the computer, and she goes, I don't know they didn't really explain to me what happened, but they figured out I am supposed to be on this flight, but something happened to my ticket, and my seat was already gone and all this stuff, you know? And so, so then she starts to issue me a ticket. And I did tell her, cause my company allows us to fly in premium economy when the flights are over 6 hours. And so I said to her, I was like, hey, is there any way to put me, cause I did pay for the premium economy ticket. And she goes, oh, hold on a minute. Now, again, I'm very frustrated, but I was telling her, like, I did tell her up front, I'm not frustrated with you. It's been this whole process, because for 24 hours, I've been worried about my freaking ticket, because it went away and then it came back, and then it went away and it came back. And so, I said, I really appreciate you helping me, like, you're doing what you're doing. And I said, so my frustration is not with you. Please don't take it personally. And she's like, no, I got it, And the next thing you know, she hands me a ticket and she put me in first class.
Mm-hmm.
I was like, wow, like, I just wanted the premium economy, but like, and it all worked out. But, I was thinking about like what I wanted to talk about on this after now, mind you, now the angst has come down. I'm on the plane and sitting in the lap of luxury, because I'm telling you, if you never get great son, that needs to be a goal in your life. Fly on an international flight in first class. I'm telling you what, it is an experience like you'll never forget. But, and Michelle, I was telling Michelle's story earlier, and she's like, yeah, now you're going to think you need that all the time. I'm like, yeah, trust me, you do think, but I know it's not reality. Right. But
right. Yeah.
Anyway, so this goes into your story. You want to talk about a bunch of entitled people sit in first class. Oh my gosh. The way they treat you is like, they give you these tablecloths for your meal, and then they bring you real dishes and real silverware, and they're constantly filling up your glasses with drinks, and and you're just like, where when you're in the cattle car, it's like, yeah, you get a drink every like 6 hours when we bring the cart around, so anyway, so as I was flying back, and I started thinking about kind of what I wanted to go to with this is that it's that negative energy. It's that veil, right? It's that the archons were feeding off the fact that I was frustrated, and that that situation with the lady who was rebooking me could have went really differently, right? Like I could have gotten caught up in the fact that I was very, very irritated and very, very on edge that the airlines had screwed up everything, and there was a possibility I wasn't getting home, and taking it out on her. You see what I'm saying? But I had to take a step back and say, this isn't her fault. She didn't cause this. She's doing what she needs to do to help me. And I need to be appreciative of the fact that she's doing that. And it was that moment that I think everything changed, right? Because I was getting very frustrated with her. But then when she stepped away to go look at the computer, like something came over me and said, it's not her fault. You need to not treat her that way. It's not her fault. She didn't cause this.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And so that's where I think, it's things like that cause us to give off that negative energy. So if you have this 8 to 20 foot energy field that's around you, and you're giving off negative energy, it's going to start affecting the people around you. And so then you start to create this line of negative energy.
Yeah, I get that. With my job, I feel like everyone there is so negative and pessimistic a lot of the time, and like we're just doing anything to get through the day and do our job. And so that's always been hard for me as someone who tries to be more positive and stuff, and it's like everyone around you is like the most pissed person you've ever seen. Like yeah, it definitely depends. I mean, I'm over 2 years in now. Like I've gotten used to it, but it's like I've had to, work on that for myself of not letting other people's energy affect mine. And it can definitely be really hard when it's literally everyone around you. Because we all have our moments, that's called being human. Like, that's part of the experience. But obviously we do our best as humans to try not to affect other people and not lash out at other people, like you said. But yeah,
but if you take a moment and you could apply this to anything that happens in the world, right? And again, I'm not saying, I don't want to say that you're opinions on something are invalid. What I'm saying is that when you look at the way the information is presented to you, it's presented in a way that is meant for us to have negative energy.
Mm-hmm.
It's presented in a way for us to be controversial to one another.
Mm-hmm. I think that's what they call propaganda.
Well, it is, but I mean,
Yeah.
if you think about again, let's take it back to the archons, right? The archons, if we were all in Christ consciousness, there would be no energy for them to feed off of, because we would all know that this is not real, that this world here is not real. This is not our home. This is not where we're supposed to be. And we could see through the veil. We can see through what they're doing, and we don't pay them attention. We don't give them the energy that they need to survive.
Mm-hmm. I get that. Yeah, I get that. I'm just thinking like my belief of if we really are, spiritual beings having a human experience, like we have a home elsewhere, whatever it is, if that's true, then we're actually incredibly lucky to get to experience the realm that is Earth. And I just feel like it's our job and responsibility as human beings to nurture and care for the Earth and be able to build a heaven on Earth. And that is just something that is not a priority for a lot of people. And that's why I think heaven and or hell can both be on Earth. It's just what we make of it. And I think, I mean, yeah, it's just hard. Like you said, I mean, there's so many things. It feels very convoluted and complex sometimes, but just two things being true at once, and kind of the yin and yang of it all, and it's a lot.
No, for sure.
Yeah.
And I think, like, it's funny you say that, because I'm one of these people that I do agree with what you're saying, right? And so this is kind of where I've diverted from the Gnostic kind of thought. Is maybe part of our awakening is to create heaven on earth.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe that's what, if you look at the ultimate source, and in their view, right? So you got this flawed creator who doesn't know about the higher sources, and Jesus came from the higher source to teach us, to make us remember who we were.
Mm-hmm.
And maybe part of that was that it's that heaven on earth kind of concept. If we were created in the image of the good source, then, and we come from the good source, right? We have this divine spark in us. And it's funny that now that I'm aware of that, when I read the Bible today, there's a whole lot of stuff in there that where Jesus said, like, I'm within you, the kingdom of heaven is within you. And he really was this radical mystical teacher, which is not what we have been told to believe, right? Like,
Mm-hmm.
there's this Pauline Christianity that's not what Jesus was teaching.
Mm-hmm.
And the whole structure was built on the Pauline Christianity interpretation.
And it's like, that's not even the end all be all necessarily, because there have been other beliefs for thousands of years as well, and like before there was Christianity, it's like there still is today, obviously, but like much more polytheistic kind of beliefs of there being more than one God. There's like, multiple gods for different things, and people, civilizations have believed that for thousands of years, and people still continue to today. Everyone has their own beliefs and what they might pray to or worship or anything like that. And yeah, I just think about, like, I've just been learning a bit more about like Celtic stuff, and because that's kind of like where some of my roots are from, most of my roots maybe.
Say it isn't so, redheaded girl.
Yeah, I'm totally not like half Irish, and and then the other half is like Slavic and,
right,
and
exactly.
Scandinavian. So I got all kinds of magical tribe running through my blood. Like, it's just, yeah. But with like, with Celtic traditions, it's just so much more earth focused, honoring the earth and taking care of the earth, because that's the only real thing we know is the world that we live on,
Mm.
So,
Well, I would say if you remember who you are in your awakening process, then that is not where we're from.
I'm not saying it's where we're from. I'm just saying, like, it's the very real thing that we have here, like just being on Earth and knowing that we can touch grass and all this stuff. Like, it's our job to take care of it, And that doesn't necessarily mean we're from here. It's like we could be from somewhere else and we were sent here maybe to just. It's our job to take care of the earth. That's all I can really say. I feel about it.
Oh yeah. No, I totally 100% agree with you on that.
Mm-hmm.
So there's another. I think it was in another article I was reading on Substack. So one of the things that I've been dabbling in is like, okay, so part of this started when you guys started talking about these dreams,
Mm-hmm.
and I've never had these lucid dreams, so I started doing some study on dreams and things, and one of the things that talks about that people who are awakened or enlightened, they can do these astral projections, and then they have out of body experiences, and so I was like, well, how does one get to that point? And so one of the things I'll tell you, it's going to sound really weird, but it actually happened, was binaural beats. They call it binaural beats. So I take it, you know what that is.
Yeah.
Grace, do you know what that is, Michelle? Because I didn't at first. So, I mean, don't feel bad. But the binaural beats is these frequencies, right? Your body can be tuned to these frequencies. And what you kind of have to do this in a very quiet place, and you need to have headphones. And what happens is the sound generation will send one frequency in one ear and a different frequency in the other ear. And then your brain will make it to be one frequency, but it's two different frequencies. And so when your brain does that, it creates these different sensations, right? So like there's these frequencies for healing, there's frequencies for having lucid dreams, and there's frequencies for training your brain to have an out-of-body experience. And so when you have these out-of-body experiences is when they claim is when you can enter the spiritual realm, because your spirit leaves your body, but your body stays where it's at in bed. So Carl Jung called this, well, actually there's a guy called Robert Monroe who did a whole thing on out-of-body experiences, and there's a whole institute that will teach people how to do this, but it's mind awake, body asleep. So your mind is still really very active because it's living in the spiritual world, it's experiencing the spiritual world, but your body is staying in the material world and it's resting. So I started playing around with this and thinking, okay, well, I know you're going to think I'm weird, but it actually happened. And so, I figured out there's these frequencies called the God frequencies. It's 963 hertz or something like that. I have to actually get it out for you, but you lay in bed and I put my headphones on and I pipe these the frequencies through my headphones. And now some people can do it with music, but I just did the straight tones just to see what would happen. Right. And so, I get in bed and I'm laying there and the tones are going in, and then, you're starting to meditate, but you start to get the sensation of relaxation. And so, I mean, you get into this point of so deep relaxation that you just feel like you're part of the bed. I mean, literally feeling like you're part of the bed. Right. And then about 45 minutes into it, and the research I was doing, it says it takes about 45 minutes because your body has to get really completely relaxed. And then all of a sudden you'll start to feel this rising sensation. And then that's the sensation where your spirit is leaving and you're having an out-of-body experience. But most people, it takes them several times because, and this is what happened, you freak out when that experience starts happening. Because I literally felt my existence rising up, and then I freaked out, and then it brought me back down. Right? So I never actually had the experience, but I will tell you, for an hour laying there, like, it was this weird awareness that I had. Like
Mhm.
every little sound I could hear, every little just thing in this, like just so in tune with everything that was happening. Even though I was wide awake and I was still in my physical body, it was really bizarre. And so what they say is if you're going to continue, which I plan to continue, what they say is you have to train yourself to not freak out, right? Because
Mhm.
it is a very, I'm telling you, it was a really weird experience. Like all of a sudden I just, and then, then you're like, oh my gosh, so if, and they teach you like there's techniques you can say to yourself, like, you got to ground yourself, you got to ground your spiritual mind so that you can actually have the experience.
Mhm.
So
Nice. Yeah, that's cool.
but
I would say
okay,
just be careful, like I don't know if you would need someone by your side cuz I like
no, because
I haven't personally like felt that kind of experience. I feel like I've had my own version of it that I can explain if you want, but just in general I feel like something I see online is like maybe struggling to get back into your body, or that's kind of when you experience like sleep paralysis or something like that. That's just something to like I'm
well,
not
all
trying
the
to.
researches I've done is saying that when you have a, like, what they tell you is to set an alarm, because the
Mhm.
sudden alarm will bring you right back.
That makes sense, yeah.
You know,
Okay.
What would
Yeah.
happen if you don't return?
I guess you'd be in sleep paralysis. But okay, hold on, hold that thought for just a second, Michelle, because I wanted to finish what I was saying, and this goes to what Grace was saying. So, the article was talking about that the Earth has its own magnetic field,
Mm.
and that we're supposed to be in tune with nature, right? And so one of the things that one of the Eastern concepts, and I don't want to say it was Buddhism because I don't remember exactly which one it was, but it talks about how the the first thing they do in the morning is they go outside and they stand in the grass with no shoes on, and they ground themselves to the earth, and it's actually
Mhm.
healing for you to do that. You should
Mhm.
spend 10 or 15 minutes every morning with your bare feet on the earth, and it
Mhm.
tunes your frequencies. And
Yeah.
so I was like, that's kind of interesting. Now, that part I have not tried yet because, I get like trying to find 15 minutes in the morning, and I know I could make the 15 minutes. So that's a poor excuse to not try it. But it was just interesting because, thinking about the two things that we just talked about, the energy field that's around me. And so whatever, like, so I'm going to bring this in, you talked about this earlier, Grace, a few episodes ago, how like you can walk into the room and you can just feel the
Mm.
vibes.
Mhm. Mhm.
And so now I think, okay, well, maybe that's the energy field that's giving off, right? If the room that you walk into, if the vibes are all out of whack, maybe you're experiencing those different energy fluctuations coming into your energy field.
Mhm. Mhm.
And that's the creepy feeling you get.
Right. Yeah. Yeah, there's a this is kind of random, but there's one of the buildings one of the apartment buildings I currently deliver to is I don't know how old. I feel like it's a pretty old building. I want to say like the 60s maybe. And it's just more senior living. And so, older people retired and stuff and basically, more towards the end of their life kind of situation. And so every time I'm like in that building, it just feels kind of dense and
Mm.
dark. Yeah, for me personally. And that could be me being more energetically sensitive, but it's just like it just it's not that it gives me bad vibes. It's just like like I don't know. That's how I feel going into that building a lot. So, yeah.
Well, it could be because, if they're, and I don't want to say this to be mean, but, if they're all senior citizens, I mean,
Yeah.
there's a point in life when you start to think about your mortality. And,
Mhm. Mhm.
you know, I mean, I'm kind of there, but I'm not quite there because I'm not that old. But,
I've been
I mean,
there and I'm only 25.
well, I'm just saying though, I mean, I think more about dying than I ever did because
Yeah.
I'm closer, right? I'm closer
Mhm.
to death than I was at your age, if that
Mhm.
makes sense.
Yeah, yeah.
And so, you know what I mean? So when you get to be like 70 or 80, I'm sure that it's, you're like, when is the shoe going to drop? Right. Like
Right, right.
you know what I'm saying? And so like, that's and some people aren't ready for that,
Mhm.
So anyway, kind of bring it back, like, so I think the energy fields that we have, when we give off negative energy, if if the archons are real and that we're feeding them, and it's interesting you say the polytheistic religion, because Judaism was polytheistic, and that's the thing they don't tell you, right? Because they believed that there were spiritual beings that were divine, that were created by God. So the angels do exist, and the angels are divine, and sometimes these angels were worshipped as gods. And so, what would really be cool, and I've always wanted to try to do this, is that, there's every civilization that had multiple deities in their civilization, there's this thought that they're all the same deity, right? So like the Greeks had and I'm going to use a simple one, the god of wine, because they had to have a god for everything. But, that same god was also in Roman mythology, which was also in Egyptian mythology, which was also in, and it's the same entity, and it can be traced back to the original deity that whoever started, I don't know which civilization had polytheistic beliefs, but that's, what I'm saying? You could take from that beginning and draw it all the way through to even today, that, because there are cultures that exist today that still have polytheistic beliefs.
You're right. Yeah.
And some would say that those are the archons. Those are the archons. And we're feeding our energy. So when we get angered, or we get divided over a topic, or we become human, and we forget that we're divine, we give off that negative energy, and then it just feeds them, and that allows them to keep the veil. So they're working really hard to keep the veil over our eyes, to keep us ignorant. And when we give in to that, that's what causes all the hate and discontent and the division, because that's what they need.
Right. Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah. Can I share with you my experience with astral projection? And I because if I were to consider it astral projection, it was never intentional. Like I never sat down like you did, or laid down and focused on astral projecting. It's usually just like falling asleep. I don't know if it's in a specific way or in a specific amount of time. I don't know. It's just sometimes when I fall asleep and then I have like a dream, it's just a certain kind of dream that I would have where suddenly it would become very real, or it felt incredibly real and visceral. Like, for example, the main one I think of is I was like back at one of my like elementary schools growing up, like wandering the halls. It was completely empty, and then I heard my aunt's voice, who has passed. I heard her voice in one of the classrooms, and she was like, "What's in there?" And I went to grab the doorknob, and I could like feel the doorknob, and it was just very intense. It felt very intense because I was trying to open the door. It was like I could feel it. Just felt like I was being pushed back, and like it was taking all my strength to try and move or something. And then I don't even know how to describe it, because it was like it's only happened like a handful of times. This has only happened a handful of times for me when it comes to like certain dreams that I've had. But I'll feel and like hear like a literal dissonance, like a frequency almost dissonance of like static of some kind. Like I'll hear it and I'll feel it, and I feel like that's kind of that point of like crossing over to astral projection, and I haven't been able to cross that threshold because it feels so strong and tight and like kind of hard to break through for me personally. But that was not even like trying. It just happened when I like took a nap, and like that, yeah. I don't know. And it's only happened a handful, like I want to say 3 or 4 times with different dreams. I can think of 3 off the top of my head right now, and it's all very random. It hasn't happened in a while, but yeah.
So that's your body's reaction to not letting go. And that's, when I did this a few weeks ago, that was the body's reaction. It freaked out because it was such an unusual experience that
Right.
it freaked out. So your body's natural defense, right? So you've heard the reptilian brain, and when in fight or flight, you automatically revert to your reptilian brain, which is meant to protect you.
Right.
I was going to say, so one of the things that I've read about in all of this is that you have to learn how to calm the mind, that it's okay, that this is a normal thing to do.
Yeah.
And when you can do that, but see, now the cool thing is now you know that.
Right, right.
So when you start to have that sensation, you can calm yourself down and say, no, this is okay. I don't need you to go into reptilian brain.
Yeah, because that dissonance that I've felt, it always did feel like like trying to split, like a sort of splitting. Yeah. It's just crazy that it was never like conscious or intentional. But yeah.
I was just reading about what would happen if your soul, your spirit doesn't return to your physical body. Apparently it will, because so there's a couple different, I guess, theories. One is that your soul is tethered to your physical body. So it would always return. Granted, we don't know how long it would take, and then another one, there's entities up in the other realm that will help guide your spirit back to your physical body. No.
So
honestly,
what are you worried,
I believe
Michelle? Are you worried that Grace and I are going to get stuck in the spiritual realm and not be able to return?
Look, with the amount of right. I mean, with the amount of dreams that I've had, because I dream every single night. I may not fully remember them, but I want to say I always remember at least 20 to 30%. And yeah, I mean, I dream all the time, and those can feel so incredibly real. Like I'm actually somewhere doing something, talking to someone, that the fact that I'm able to wake up every morning, I'm like, there's definitely something that's like helping me, kind of navigate these two things, because for it to feel so real, I don't know. It's just, I know that's kind of the point of dreams, but yeah.
And I mean, just look back on it. Every guest that we've had, pretty much, it's been dream based. So there has to be something there.
Well, and if you tie it back to like some of the biblical stories, right? So when oftentimes the prophets would be in a dream state, it would be described as a dream state or a trance or some sort of, not normal, like everyday life, right? It wasn't like they just had they would go into sort of a trance, right? Yeah. And so that is equated to being like a dream state, And so
Abraham, who dreamt that he wrestled with God all night or something, or was that Abraham?
What was no, it was Jacob, I think.
Jacob. Oh yeah, Jacob.
Yeah.
But that is,
well, to him it wasn't a dream though. It was real.
It was real, but
right. It's like those people, like coma patients who like wake up from their coma and they were like, I just lived like 7 years of my life. I got married and had kids.
Yeah.
And you're telling me I just woke up from a coma. Like, it was so incredibly real for them. And it's
right.
It's wild just how much we don't know.
Yeah.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Are you going to start messing around with binaural frequencies now, Michelle?
Probably not. It sounds a little scary.
It's like, I'll leave that to you guys. That's fine.
Yeah, you guys can play around with that. I will live vicariously through you guys.
She's like, I'm staying here on Earth.
Yeah, I'm gonna stay here on Earth.
See, that's the veil. That's the veil. I mean, we could spend a whole episode like deconstructing some. I mean, I have some significant theories about the way the world works. And most of them are somewhat accurate. I mean, there's a lot of evidence to show that there is an evil agenda, and whether you choose to believe it or not is really up to you, right? But I will tell you that there's a lot of things that I've in my research to prove that this is not normal, and that there are evil people pulling strings to get to this point of do we live in a simulation? I believe we do. I believe we live in a simulation, and that these evil archons, deities, whatever you want to call them, have an intent to keep us angry, to keep us at odds with one another, because otherwise they couldn't exist. If we lived in a utopia where we actually all got along and our methods of survival were helping each other out, and there were no more wars and there were no more arguments, and we were just a happy people living in heaven, then they would have no existence, because they couldn't survive. They can't survive on that type of intelligence and that type of awakeness, because again, in the Gnostic theory, they're ignorant.
Yeah.
We're more intelligent than them. We were created to be more intelligent than them, but because they can alter this veil to keep us ignorant, that's how we get caught up in their mess. And I've actually heard people, like, I've read, because me, I sit there and I research all this stuff, right? And so like I start going down rabbit holes. And so I was reading a lot of people who've had these experiences, astral projection or out of body type things. And Grace, you are 100% correct. What they described was very real to them. Like it actually felt like it was happening. And people have talked about talking to relatives or others who've been gone for years and having conversations with them about things, not necessarily like bringing up the past things, but just things in life. And then they come out of it and it's like, it felt very real to them. And then then they get like, what the heck just happened? I just talked to my aunt who's been dead for 10 years. Yeah. People have talked about meeting Jesus in an astral projection or out of body experience. And this is different than people who have died and, come back to life and describe their experience, right? It's very similar to that. So I feel like if there's a way that I could train myself to enter the spiritual world to become more awakened, then I'm going to try it.
Yeah, that's fair.
And I promise I'll come back, Michelle.
I don't want to have to send my spirit to come find you.
Sounds like a pretty cool story, though.
Yeah, exactly. How I got rescued out of the astral projection.
It's a good fantasy novel right there.
Yeah, really good.
Yeah, well,
I love a good fantasy novel.
Well, anyways, is there anything else we want to say or touch on?
No, that was it. I mean,
out?
It's been weighing heavily on me to think about, like, I don't know if this was any better explanation of what the veil or what that means.
I get it.
But
yeah.
Did you get it, Michelle?
I got it. Did I have the blank look on my face?
I don't. Well, I don't want your grandmother calling me again saying.
No, I get it. I see the vision. Do I agree with it necessarily? Maybe not, but I do see where it's coming from.
Well, and yes, I don't disagree, because I mean the whole Gnostic view on life is so radically different than what we've been programmed to think, which I think is what makes it hard to like go, is this real, right? But I would offer an alternate view. If the archons do exist, then that's what makes it more real, because then the story that we've been led to believe our entire life is not real.
Right.
And the truth is this crazy whacked out thing. Like, and it's hard, again, fight or flight, right? Your reptilian brain takes over and says, that doesn't compute, Will Robinson. It's not safe.
Right.
Yep.
Anyway. Yeah. So anyway, that's been weighing on my mind. I'm glad you guys let me vent for an hour, because I just felt like I needed to get that out. And
I get it. I feel complete with it. So
yeah. Cool.
Well, you can follow us on Facebook, Instagram, TikTok at Naked Faith Podcast. If you want to hear our thoughts about this episode or any other episode, we do post on Substack at Naked Faith Podcast. And if you'd like to join us in a conversation, you can send us an email at nakedfaithpodcast@gmail.com.
Great.
All right.
All
See you
right.
next week.
Yeah. Bye.
Bye.